Hello, John. I believe we're going to have a few discussion about Nice and also about European Union and also in terms of local internal transport within Ireland. But before I start, I'm attracted to the painting behind you of Kirkpatrick, and I understand it is your painting. Could you perhaps explain a little about that?
Good morning. That is right. That painting represents Kirkpatrick, and at the bottom of the painting is some places where people that are visiting Kirkpatrick can stay overnight at a very reasonable cost. Kirkpatrick represents where our patron saint, St. Patrick, the patron saint of Ireland, when he came here in the year 432 to convert the Irish into the Catholic faith, which he succeeded in doing. But he visited a place called Ballintubber Abbey in County Mayo, and there was a path in that time, believe it or not, to that mountain, because the Irish prior to that had that was a sacred mountain. So St. Patrick visited that mountain and went up to the top of it and fasted for 40 days and 40 nights in imitation of our divine Saviour. So it is a very sacred and a holy mountain, and every year people go in their thousands up to that summit, sometimes in their bare feet, but other times of the year different people make the ascent to the summit there, and there's a church there at the time. So that's the business about that painting.
That's very interesting. Now, can I ask you a few questions about Nice and the atrocity that happened there a few days ago? Why do you think Bastille Day was chosen in particular?
Well, Bastille Day is a public holiday and a famous day in France when people come out in their thousands to witness the celebrations in memory of that day when France got its independence from being controlled by the monarchy and by various factions, and ordinary people were treated by and large maybe abominably. So they had a French Revolution which did cause a lot of trouble to the Catholic faith, but we leave that aside for the moment. This is the celebration that the French people and visitors to France take part in, a bit like St. Patrick's Day that we have here in this country, and of course celebrated worldwide, particularly in New York, as we all know. Now, in Nice, which is a beautiful part of France, in the south of France, and where people go for holidays to that region from all walks of life. It has an image of being an upmarket destination, but nonetheless a lot of ordinary people go there and celebrate the marvellous scenery and the sea views and the coast and all the rest of it, and the French cuisine, which they're famous for. Now, so Bastille Day, there would be a lot of families with children enjoying the day out. It was a lovely day by all accounts, lovely summer sunny day. So they were all down near the seafront in their thousands, because there was fireworks going to be on later on that evening. Now, as they were watching at the fireworks and being very happy and contented after their day out in the sunshine, and perhaps even having a swim in the sea with their families and their children. French people lead very sheltered lives, as anyone that has visited France knows. They're not, generally speaking, out and about in their thousands the way there on Bastille Day. So they were down there. Now, this event that took place with this Muslim extremist, who had been known to the police because he had been in jail. He was married and had been ill-treated his wife, and was a very antisocial type of individual. But nonetheless, he's reputed to have sent his family in Tunisia, because he was Tunisian born but a French citizen. He was reputed to have sent him €100,000 Where he got that money from is a mystery at the present time, but that's what's been reputed. Now, he was married and had 3 children, but separated. The people where he lived considered him a very strange, odd individual. The police knew about him, but the police, whatever system they have in that country, the intelligence service didn't know about him. But I think the police were on duty in that town. This person that killed 84 people with a big lorry that had been hired out either to him or somebody on his behalf. It's not quite clear at the moment who rented this lorry, but the people that rented the lorry to this Muslim extremist, he obviously was able to present documents and driving licenses to sort of satisfy them that he was a bona fide individual. I don't know how he was able to justify his need for to hire a lorry. Because normally it would be a company, I think, would hire a lorry. An individual hiring a lorry such as he hired is most unusual. I'm surprised that there wasn't a mechanism there for the people that hired that lorry to inform the police and to have his details, because he was known to the police. So none of this occurred. This is why the Prime Minister, Valls, when he visited Nice, was booed by the people, because they feel that they were negligent. There was hundreds of police on duty and most of them armed. Now, this individual had reconnoitred this area. He had already planned it in conjunction probably with other people, although the implication is he was acting alone. I think that's a ludicrous position to adopt.
Could you explain perhaps why France seems to be a particular target? We've had the Paris atrocities, now the Nice atrocities, but London was only hit once on the 5th of May, and also Madrid, but they have been relatively safe. But Paris and France seems to be unable to tackle this problem as effectively as these two countries appear to have. Why would you say that is?
This is a peculiar aspect to the attacks in France. There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it as to why France should be singled out, because, as I indicated earlier, the French people lead a very sheltered and restrained life in the normal course of events. So the attacks in Paris by the Muslim extremists appear to be wherever people are gathered in restaurants, relaxing, or at a music event as happened in Paris, in a supermarket as happened in a supermarket owned by the Jewish owner, employing a Muslim, by the way, store person who managed to save various people from the attack by another extremist. Now, why France? The trouble is, France was a colonial country, and in France they have upwards of 5 million Muslims from other countries. And some of these appear to have been what they call radicalised, which is a phrase that they use to describe these people that commit these crimes. In some cases, in the one in Paris, some of the people that committed the atrocities were actually asylum seekers that had come from this exodus from Syria and Iraq and all these places. So they mixed in with the genuine refugees or the people that are fleeing for their lives, and carried out some of these attacks in Paris. So why France? I think it's the number of Muslims there and this free movement of people.
But there is something which doesn't quite add up, and I'm thinking when the attack in London occurred, the explanation was always because the West had invaded Iraq and Afghanistan. France was not involved in either of these adventures, yet it seems to be paying a disproportionate price for not being in this.
Well, that's true. But then, as I said, they were a colonial country in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, and various other African countries like Chad and all these. Now, and generally speaking, the French rule was often considered benign. and not malign, as unfortunately the case in the British colonial past, that there was a malign influence there, regretfully. But France was considered benign. So, but whether the people in those countries, because a lot of them are predominantly Muslim, whether they have a grievance against that, and that could be an underpinning it, I don't rightly know. So these are the factors that I think play to France. Also, France, funny enough, attracts 93 to 100 million visitors a year. Lourdes even gets 6 million. Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris gets 14 million. Seems impossible to think. But they have all these visitors, so these extremists, along with doing what the despicable acts that they do, are also probably targeting other countries. Don't forget there was a potential attack on one of the trains there, which 3 American servicemen happened to foil an extremist who was loading a Kalashnikov in a toilet, and only that the door was not locked. A French citizen, I believe, was going in, and I think he suffered injuries. And with the commotion, the Americans happened to be, fortunately, in the carriage and heard it and went to investigate and found it as well and overcome.
Don't you think perhaps there is a disconnect? Because most of these people seem to be second generation Muslims born in the country in which they are living in. Their parents are quite normal and trying to live a decent life. But the second generation are pulled between the culture they are brought up in and the culture they came from. So they're torn between these two cultures. What do you think is the problem to solve this? How do we solve this problem?
Well, you see, the first thing I think to sort of appreciate is that by and large, these second generation, they have the faith that they practice and this Muslim faith, and the women folk in that religion often are expected to cover themselves with buckles or whatever they call it, so that they can't be seen or their face can't be seen. So they have these practices, and with the result that the countries that they go to don't have that kind of thing. They have a more Western culture, so they feel not in harmony. The second generation don't feel in harmony with it, and they feel resentful or something. Now, and why that should be is very hard to understand, because I'm sure the educational opportunities are open to them. As a matter of fact, I think some of them join the armed forces and various other things, and perhaps some of them go to university. But you see, this is a tragedy. Even the ones that go to university, don't forget just to digress for a moment, don't forget the atrocity that occurred in New York with the Twin Towers was perpetrated by people from very well-to-do families, people from high up, if you like, well-educated. The last people one would have thought would have been of that calibre, but not alone were they of that calibre, they were diabolical in what they did with the innocent people and all the rest of it. So you just don't, you can't, I think, pinpoint anything that the Western governments can do, because any one of these is liable to go off and plot and do something horrendous. And that's the tragedy. Now, how to address it? I think if there's such a thing, and I'm sure there is, moderate people in that Muslim faith, well, they want to be speaking out much more, and people that are in mosques or wherever it is, they want to sort of know who the extremists are and let the authorities know. They need to step up to the plate more than they have done.
But there is a problem here, in the sense clearly our society is not giving these people the stability that they wish. So they go on the internet and look for something to kind of conform to their views. So in itself, it is looking for something they already feel they want. And the internet will provide it for them. And you've got to be very selective of what you look for in the internet.
There's a school of thought comes out of that. I don't subscribe to it at all. They have as much opportunities as anybody else. They have plenty of companions. we say the modern ones, the plenty of companions and opportunities. No, they're not stopped from practicing their faith, but there has to be disturbed people